The Pharmacy Podcast Network would like to thank our sponsor for supporting us at the 2026 Asembia Summit. Clearway Health is transforming specialty pharmacy for hospitals, health systems, and the patients they serve. Clearway Health is more than a specialty pharmacy partner. They're an extension of the care team. Working directly with hospitals and healthcare systems across the country, Clearway helps plan, design, build, and optimize specialty pharmacy programs that improve access, reduce barriers, and deliver better outcomes for patients with complex medical conditions. Through their embedded care model, Clearway Health places pharmacists and patient liaisons directly into clinical workflows, supporting providers with prior authorizations, financial assistance coordination, and patient education so care teams can focus on what matters most, the patient. Powered by advancing technology and real-time data insights, Clearway Health streamlines the entire medication journey, from prescription to adherence, ensuring patients receive the right medications at the right time. Born out of Boston Medical Center Health System, Clearway Health brings real-world experience and proven results, helping health systems unlock new revenue streams while expanding access to life-changing specialty medications. Clearway Health is leading the way in refining specialty pharmacy, where clinical excellence meets operational innovation. Learn more at clearwayhealth.com.
You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Each year, Asembia's Specialty Pharmacy Summit is at the epicenter of the pharmacy industry, providing a unique opportunity for stakeholders throughout the industry to understand challenges, generate solutions, and define the future. This is the Pharmacy Podcast Network's Asembia 2026 Rewind. We're dedicated to bringing you inside coverage of the pharmacy nation's biggest events, with on-the-street style interviews, with keynote speakers, attendees, exhibitors, and recurring guests who make each year special. Stay tuned each week for a new episode of this special 6-part series on the Asembia 2026 Summit, held this year in Las Vegas. We'd like to start this episode by thanking our sponsor, Clearway Health.
Allison, been waiting for this interview for so long. Since we had you on Twerks, I wanted you face to face. It's so much better to be in front of someone. Welcome to the Asembia Post Show.
Thank you. So thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sponsoring our press coverage. This is so important to get us here and to be able to mingle with the Super Bowl of specialty pharmacy leaders and the innovation. Clearway Health is a huge part of this. I was so excited that when we did your Twerks, we did an announcement of a press release that came out within that same week, which was just amazing. And your relationship with another health system that you've helped bring specialty pharmacy closer to their community. I want us to dig a little deeper today. Before, when we were on Twerks, we kind of just touched on it. Let's break into how to impact a health system, a hospital out there, some part of the United States. They want to get into specialty. They're overwhelmed. Their whole team is like, holy cow, this is going to be so expensive to do this by ourselves. Now Clearway Health steps in and says, time out. We know the standards. We know the accreditation. We know the tracks. Talk to our listeners about that whole ecosystem of how you bring that to life.
It's a lot to navigate. I think it's because the ecosystem is so broad. There are so many different components that are demanded to create a successful specialty pharmacy program. And if you're a hospital, no matter how big or small you are, you can be a small community hospital, a specialty hospital, you can be in a major urban core setting, and still you have to have the same level of expertise to create a strong program. And so when you think about what's required, oftentimes people start with the data, which is hard enough on its own to harness the data to understand the total opportunity, but then you take it and say, okay, now we know what our opportunity is, but how do we capture it? Then you think about, how do we build a pharmacy, optimize it, accredit it? How do we navigate limited distribution drugs, manufacturer restrictions, regulatory and compliance issues? And so suddenly you have this need for a small army of people who are very specialized in many different areas. And oftentimes I think hospitals think that it becomes either impossible or cost prohibitive. But when you think about scale, how do you create compounding growth? How do you start now to not lose time? And then how do you pull in all of those experts so you're not left posting 24 job requisitions and trying to hire for experts when you can really just rely on a pool of experts who can help you scale a little bit differently?
So how has Clearway Health identified the geographics of where is specialty missing inside a health system? How do you guys determine that?
Yeah, so, hospitals have long had pharmacy only as an inpatient setting. And so that is where most people tend to focus. And so what we've started to look at is there are still more than 50% of hospitals across the U.S. that do not have an outpatient pharmacy. So they've relied on this long-standing inpatient service line. And so where we start is to say, do you have an outpatient pharmacy? And if so, are you providing specialty pharmacy services? And so that's kind of the first step. And then the next step is kind of this decision tree. Yes, you have one, and no, you're not providing specialty services, or no, you don't have a pharmacy, and we have to help you figure out how to do it. The good news is there is a pathway for all of those. There is no right or wrong answer. I would say the only wrong answer is choosing not to do it, right? Because there's just incredible opportunity for people to choose to provide these services to their community. But when we start down this path, those are some of the criteria that we look at, and then it helps to create the timeline. Oftentimes, there are strategies that we can implement in between not having a pharmacy and the opening of an outpatient or specialty pharmacy, and that allows us to do things like perhaps alternate delivery models, relying or optimizing on contract pharmacy relationships, and helping to grow patient awareness, provider awareness, so that when the doors of that pharmacy open, it becomes a fast track to growing a program because you already have educated patients, providers, and care teams who are expecting to provide a service. So a lot of different criteria that flow into it, but that's where we start.
Yeah, I'm thinking if I'm a CEO of a hospital and we know that we need this, we know that our community needs this, to rely on someone that's done it 100 times with other health systems, that bring a level of comfort. And then I would want it to be specific to my hospital system. So share you don't have to give a certain name unless you want to, but what's been a success story out there that you've been really proud of?
I could spend days. And it's the best part of what we do, getting to talk about the success stories of hospitals. But, you brought a good point, and I'll tell you a couple of stories that we have to have this standardized approach because we know what works in specialty pharmacy. Mm-hmm. We are the specialty pharmacy experts, and we know how to scale successful programs for hospitals and health systems, and we know how to localize it based on the needs of that system or that community. There will always be factors that require different attention to make sure that it's a successful program for our partner. And when we do that, it drives the successes that we see. So we can take a couple of different pathways. We have had several different hospitals who have had retail pharmacy chains. If you think back over 5 or 10 years, when hospitals were looking to branch into the retail pharmacy space, didn't quite know how to do it, and they looked to maybe some of the big box or retail chains to help them out. Well, 10 years later, they've learned a lot, and they have the ability to provide that service on their own, which provides care in a comfortable care setting and revenue margin generation that they should keep.
Branding.
And so branding
to
is
the
a
community.
Huge part of it. Absolutely. You create more touch points and access points to care, and it accelerates the brand recognition and their ability to capture more of their market share. And so some of the success stories are where we've had these exact conversations with clients and hospitals, and they've said, hey, we are very glad to have been able to provide pharmacy services in a retail setting, but we want our name on it. So how do we do that? And so, you look at different organizations. I'll talk about 2 that are in the children's hospital space. We have Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., who serves the nation's children. We have Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, who are now looking to expand with their second hospital location serving the Chicagoland area. And you look at those successes, and they are creating new access points for patients and families they have never had before in their markets. And so it's branding, like you said, it's access, but it's also the ability to provide a service that they are the best equipped to provide to their patients. Why would they look to anyone else to provide pharmacy services to their patients and those families when they can do it on their own?
When I think of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I think of AGH, Allegheny Health General, or Allegheny Health Network, AHN, and then UPMC. If I knew that I had a rare disease, that I could trust one of those two organizations to service my health, there's a level of comfort for me than just going to someone that I wasn't recognizing or something that's outside of my community. Being community, we're so busy today. We have so much data. We have so many things going on. I think that we've gotten away from community. Clearway Health embedding the best of the best practices brings community back to healthcare. And I really like that about Clearway. I've kind of stalked you guys since we started working with you, and I've now found other things about what you've done for empowering health systems, and that ripples throughout the entire community to develop more trust, to demystifying something that's pretty scary for a family when they hear, hey, mom has cancer, and now what do we do? Oh, don't worry. UPMC right in Pittsburgh has it covered, and they have no idea that Clearway might be behind the scenes, but it is. Like, that's an important part of health.
It is, and I appreciate you saying that and the kind words about Clearway. And one of the things that I think is the most unique and precious about the work that we do is that we are the invisible extension of a care team in a community. And so if you think about the work that Clearway Health does, when we partner with a hospital or health system, we have two groups of people that we deploy to do this really hard and complex work. We have the on-site team who we hire that are pharmacists, leaders, clinical pharmacists, pharmacy patient liaisons. They are sitting inside of the outpatient specialty clinics, sitting right beside the provider, the nurse, the MA, and the care team, and they look and feel just like the hospital team members that are employed by that health system. So they will often wear the same color scrubs. They are badged to look like those other employees and team members. And that's a critical part of our success, but it also means that is the highest level of trust that a hospital places with Clearway Health to provide the service that is truly an extension of their care team to serve their patients. You then have the second group of people that we deploy who are the experts corporately who do all of that work that we talked about a little bit ago, where you have dozens of people that are required with different skill sets, and it is impossible often for a hospital to hire dozens of people with different skill sets to meet the scale and the speed and the expertise that's needed for a quality program. And so it is truly an honor when hospitals and health systems choose Clearway Health to be their specialty pharmacy partner, because we become an extension of their team into their community to care for their patients, and there is no greater honor to do the work that we do.
I see it in your eyes. That's why I like being in front of you. This is a mission for you. This is a mission for Clearway Health. I love being an amplifier for this. Thank you so much for your support at the Asembia 2026 Super Bowl Specialty Pharmacy event, and thank you so much for this interview. This has been great.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being a voice for pharmacy.
Accessia Health is back on the Asembia 2026 coverage show. My friend Jennifer Noonan, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too, Todd. It's been a while.
I know, but we keep meeting through the microphones, so we always meet over microphones. Would you like to meet me over a microphone?
That sounds lovely. A microphone meeting.
A microphone meeting. Hey, Accessia Health has been very busy. You show up at all the right conferences. You show up at some conferences that are outside of pharmacy that you should be getting the patient's voice out there. Advocacy of that patient's voice, health equity, these are all fabric. This is all part of the fibers of what builds and what Accessia is all about. Talk to our listeners, share the updates on Accessia Health and some of your successes.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. First, for those that might be listening that aren't familiar with Accessia Health, we are 501c3 patient assistance organization, so we can help patients with copays, but also a lot more than that now. If you remember back in 23, we updated our model for patient assistance to be called Your Assistance, Your Choice. It allowed flexibility within the grants so that patients who might not need all of that funding to go towards copay, but they really needed assistance in, say, premiums in order to have an affordable copay, they didn't have to continue applying for separate grants for those types of funding. Our grants are now set up with one amount, and within that amount, a patient can use their funding for copay, premiums, travel, or even think about some durable medical equipments that patients require, such as pulmonary fibrosis patients needing oxygen in order to be able to leave their home to go to the doctor's visit. So it really does all tie back to patients' adherence. It removed that layer of burden to apply again and again and again for different things, and they might not even realize that they had options to apply for those different opportunities. So we're just working hard at educating our patients on how to spend their money, and sometimes that means looking at ways to allocate money towards one area they might not have realized so that they can afford another area. And we also have started really paying attention to what needs a patient might have outside of just that direct treatment. Because what we found was that individuals who are hungry or unhoused, they're not really able to think about a treatment, much less try to be adherent to it or find all the different pathways they have to go through to get enough money to pay for it.
Your team made an investment and took a trip, Washington, D.C., building more attention to the patient's voice. And we're also busy. I look at the hundreds, thousands of people that are here at Asembia. The patient sometimes gets left out in some of the excitement. I'm guilty of that, where I love to talk to innovators and I get wrapped up in the AI and I get wrapped up in the technology, but then all of a sudden there's the patient. So you guys are the exact opposite. You're constantly bringing light to the patient's story.
Yeah, it's very exciting for us this year to have our first, again, in quite a few years. I think it's been almost 10 years since our organization was able to gather together, take patients and staff together with HMC to Washington, D.C. in person with several patients that are either active on service or have used our services in the past to tell their stories directly. I believe we had a total of 5 groups. One of those groups had a rare disease child with them, and it was a really good experience for him, for his mother, to be able to sit in front of legislators and tell them exactly how some of these different impactful laws are keeping her from getting the appropriate care for her child when he's sick or being able to afford his treatments when he needs to get them. Then we followed that back up just a few weeks ago with an all-week advocacy week by phone. And I was able to sit in on a few of those calls, and it was just great. The energy that you got to feel between, say, these House representative speakers who had never heard the story played out that way from a real person, and it was absolutely changing in his, you could see he suddenly understood, like something that maybe before was just some data or figures turned into a little boy instead of just something that was the next law to look at and think about. So being able to bring patients directly to Capitol Hill and tell their story so that changes can be made and we don't have to have one more patient that goes without treatment.
That is so powerful. Being here at Asembia, how do you get specialty pharmacies to plug into these programs? What systems are in place that you're like, hey, specialty pharmacy ABC, we're Accessia Health, here's what we do. What's the process? What happens at that point? How do you get them plugged in?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, many access gaps are discovered in the specialty pharmacy. Patient maybe has received a diagnosis, has a provider of care, and they now have a prescription, if you will, of a treatment. And then the SPs are often the first ones that find out that the patient has an access gap and then have to try to lead them to that. So what we do is try to network with any and all specialty pharmacies and bring them into the network that we know they're there, and then offer to provide education around how to sign patients up or how to educate patients to sign up for our grants. We're also working on some systems internally right now to speed up that part of the process for providers, because we recognize that they are often one of the first entry points for discovering a patient who has a need.
So what is your shout out to listeners who didn't get to come to Asembia, they're in specialty? What are the steps that they can take to learn more about Accessia Health, but then also partner with you?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, just navigating to our website at accessiahealth.org and going directly to the programs page is where anyone can see what actual programs we have available for patients to sign up for. One big call out I always like to share that isn't necessarily true across all of the organizations like mine, and so I just want to make sure people understand that we have a first come, first serve wait list. So if a program isn't fully open and green saying that a patient could apply that day and be accepted because there's no wait list, if it says at capacity, that means there's a wait list, but it could be only one person, it could be 5. And so I always suggest that if someone thinks even that there's going to be a need for a patient in specialty, we already know there's delays that come with prior auths and where are you going to get this and who's going to administer. So in order to try to smooth that out a little bit more, we hope that they understand to go ahead and apply. You can say no when the money comes available if it's not a need any longer, but if people don't get on the wait list, then they'll never see that green light of being accepted into the program for evaluation.
Jennifer Noonan, patient advocate, patient voice protector and supporter. I've been very proud of your organization. It was so much fun having you on the show, and I appreciate your time here.
Thanks a bunch, Todd. Talk soon.
Hi, this is Aleata Postell with CenterWell, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Aleata, I don't want to say I have favorites, but I was really looking forward to this interview, so thank you so much. I know how busy you are. Been tracking your career now for 5 or 6 years, and just the passion and the commitment and the team orientation, everything that you get to be integrated into becomes better because you believe in teams and you believe in building people. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. And I think you know this, and I've shared this with you. I am passionate about pharmacy. I'm passionate about healthcare. I have my whys, and it's really about helping people achieve their best health outcomes. And then for me personally, too, with family members that have had those life-threatening illnesses, I've lost people to cancer. I've lost friends to HIV. I think I've shared that before. So being able to be in a position to really change the dynamics of how access is done, how we can change our models, that is where I get really excited. And I love that I get to have a career where I get to do great work.
Well, this is your first time back in the new role that you're with CenterWell. Talk to us about your role and what you're doing at CenterWell.
Yes. So in my role, I'm leading growth for CenterWell Pharmacy business, but we're doing some really great things with direct-to-patient programs and direct-to-employer. One of the things that we've been focusing on is how do we really dive into transparency and what does that mean? And then what are the tools that we can create to enable models for manufacturers to continue to lower the price of drugs, to get it out to consumers? Jim, our CEO, has talked about our organization being a consumer-driven healthcare organization. And at CenterWell, we have been living that. Our patients have to choose us, so we listen to them. We understand their needs, whether it's financial or care needs. We are creating the right space for them to be able to navigate their care journey, and that excites me.
Well, practicing what you preach, I've looked up to you over the years because every time I see something on LinkedIn post and I follow through it, I stalk you a little bit, look up on Google what's going on, I can find something else that's like, here's the outcome of what you're what you're talking about, what you're posting about. So part of that is coming together at Asembia. You were part of a panel discussion that was really digging down into what does transparency truly mean for the end user, which is our patients. It's the most important people in healthcare. Talk to us about that panel and what you guys talked about.
Yes. So when you hear the word transparency, I think one of the things that I shared was it really means I want to know what I'm paying for. Mm-hmm. I want to understand what may be hidden underneath. Make me trust you, right? So let's have that conversation. So when we were discussing on the panel, one of the things that I felt was important is, to me, transparency is the entry fee. It's not the end, right? To really be transparent, are you willing and open to, especially, let's talk from the angle of a PBM, are you willing and open to allow whoever your clients are that you're serving to understand what they're paying for, what their fees are, audit with you, but also allow innovation? We also talked about the employer perspective as well. I don't think that employers are against innovation. They're against volatility. So from their standpoint, they want to be able to offer life-saving therapies to their employees, but they also need to be able to predict what that will cost, right? And so how do you balance that in a real transparent model is some of the themes that we were talking about. We also talked about policy. I think you have been following policy a lot, and I know that you're a huge advocate for doing the right things. And so as we look at policy shifts and some of the changes there, we had another panel where we discussed that and talked about what do we need to do, in the private market to really, meet the changes that are coming with some of the policy things that we see.
Yeah, and talk to us about how you guys are paying attention to what's really working. One of the things that is shaking up the market is Mark Cuban cost plus drugs, and how there's a flat fee on top of the cost of the product, and it simplifies it. So the consumer's like, wow, it's that easy. I've seen comments, and Mark Cuban's been interviewed. Dr. Alex, who runs that organization, he's also said it. The people will comment, I almost don't trust this because it's so simple, but it's such a low cost, like, why not trust it? And it is. It's simplifying this. This is getting away from 4 different rebate systems or this formulary or this situation. And then that demystification builds trust, because the transparency that they're, it pulls away that I'm not mysteriously wondering, why is this medication so expensive now? So I think that that's important. What do you see in the evolution of? You've been around long enough to see it where it was, how bad it got, and now all of a sudden I feel like there's light now that we're seeing at the end of this tunnel.
Yes, so I actually had on one of my panels, Paul Vasquez from Cost Plus Drugs joined us, and the importance of having him on was because Mark Cuban is such an innovator, a disruptor. So going back to one of the first things you said, you see on his website, it's simple, it's clear, you know what you're paying for. Again, one of the definitions, the foundation of transparency, really understanding what this means. And so I think he has done a really great job of shifting and making things more visible, right? You have someone with his platform that is bringing to light issues within healthcare. So for us, is how do you respond to that, right? And then the other thing that I really appreciate about the Cost Plus team is their innovation. And so part of our partnership with them is that their technology, SwiftRx, which will enable things for us automated, leveraging AI to really remove some of the non-value added processes or workflows and the systems that attributes to costs. And so I think, when you look at the model end to end, it's finding like partners, like the Cost Plus team, manufacturers, employers that are willing to come together and really have those hard conversations to say, all right, we need to redesign this model. It's not working. It's been built decades ago, but we have new therapies that are now coming on that is forcing us to rethink how we deliver care, right? And we know GLP-1s, you think about that, right? And how that has really exploded. And consumers are saying, I want this therapy, give it to me in the way that I need to receive it. And so now we're forced to provide choice. And that's why you have partners like Cost Plus Drugs that will work with you to be able to enable those things.
All right, let's talk about the knife's edge of direct-to-consumer. And when I say knife's edge, I mean losing the physician communication and the pharmacist communication and the pharmacist touch for convenience. Where's the balance in direct-to-consumer when it's becoming so popular, and there's definitely transparency in it, and there's definitely cost savings in it because you're eliminating, middlemen and middle people and middle organizations? Talk to us in your opinion of direct-to-consumer, how we keep the patient safe, how we keep them engaged and communicating with their providers, but making it more direct to the consumer.
Yeah, so
it's hard.
It is hard, but I will. I'm going to talk to you from our angle, right? The role of the pharmacist is important, and so at CenterWell, when so we have our NovoCare program. So I'll share with you how that goes. The prescriber has the authority to write the script into us. Once they write that script and it comes into the pharmacy is doing what they do every single day, and you know how passionate I am about pharmacists. So they're providing clinical care. They're talking to the patient about their nutrition. They're making sure that they're adherent. They're talking to them about their side effects. That can't be lost. They still need their pharmacist in that journey. I think you and I both know how many times a patient actually sees their pharmacist versus their doctor, so that relationship continues. And so in our model, the pharmacist is very well engaged. I will also say we have nurses that could talk about their overall condition. Sometimes it's not about just their obesity. You have to think about the comorbidities that they have as well. Yep. And so I think that is really important in the consumer model as well. It can't just be an AI-driven workflow. You still need some sort of touch, and you still need to be able to deliver care in the way that the patient needs. Some are more savvy, and maybe that works for them, and they don't want all of that conversation, and others do, right? And they started the therapy for a reason. And so how do you make sure that they're successful and get the outcomes that they're looking for? And that's where those clinical programs still play a part.
Aleata, Postell, CenterWell, congratulations, by the way, and promise you're going to come back to Asembia 2027 on the show.
I will. You know I love you, Todd,
I love
so
you
I will
too.
see you back.
All right. See ya.
We'd like to thank our podcast press sponsor, Paragon 360, where complex therapies meet personalized care. Paragon 360 is an independent specialty pharmacy focused on patients with rare and complex conditions, delivering a high level of care through advanced technology and one-on-one clinical support. Unlike traditional models, Paragon builds strong relationships with patients, providers, and healthcare teams, acting as an extension of the clinical team to accelerate time to treatment, improve adherence, and simplify access to life-changing therapies. Through their innovative digital health platform and adherence programs, Paragon provides real-time insights into patient progress, helping ensure better outcomes while reducing barriers across the treatment journey. From oncology and neurology to rare disease and advanced biologics, their expertise, nationwide reach, and 24/7 clinical support position them at the forefront of modern specialty pharmacy care. With industry-leading patient satisfaction and a commitment to personalized, high-touch service, Paragon Pharmacy 360 is redefining what it means to support patients with complex conditions. As we head into Asembia 2026, Paragon is helping shape the future of specialty pharmacy one patient at a time. To learn more, visit paragonpharmacy.org.
Hey, this is Derek Dennis with Clearway Health, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Derek, welcome to the coverage of the Asembia 2026 Specialty Pharmacy event. This is the Super Bowl of Specialty Pharmacy. It's my favorite event in specialty. I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Very excited to be here and talk about some of the the great things we have going on at Clearway Health. So yeah, appreciate the time.
Something that's special to us is Clearway Health has helped us with our sponsorship for pushing out our press conference, and we are focused on 3 specific segments, and one of those is women's health, and I kind of want to talk to you about women's health and different facets of focus that Clearway Health has dug into, and you've really made an impact. So tell our listeners about that.
Women's health within specialty pharmacy offers, great opportunity to impact people. One of the areas specifically that we've had some strong success in improving the way that, women receive health care is in the reproductive health space. If we have time, we could possibly talk a little bit about rheumatology and some other areas where there's a disproportionate impact on women, but certainly would like to talk through some of the reproductive health programs we built out with our clients across the country.
So let's dig into that from a specialty pharmacy perspective. How do we get more women to pay attention to their health with these complex therapies that are in place, and then marry that with an ecosystem that surrounds them and supports them and keeps them adherent? Talk to us about those experiences based on what Clearway Health has helped in.
Right. I think, the complexity of care, first of all, is one of the barriers. And putting together a program where you have specific support people that are connected to the clinics, connected to the pharmacies to reduce that barrier is really important. And I'll give an example. When we were looking at reproductive health and how do we help more women and more families, achieve success in that area, we found that there were gaps in how the folks in the clinic were able to communicate with the pharmacy and meet very specific timing that's related to IVF and those types of procedures. And so kind of our first entry into that was around cost. Those are very expensive, therapies, sometimes up to $25,000, $30,000. Coverage is very limited or mixed across the board. And so we started with some liaisons and folks to help specifically with cost and access to drugs. And that was one of the first steps, helped a lot. It was broke down sort of the ways that these patients can go about getting their medications, specific pharmacies that they may need to interact with, specific foundations and coverage help in that way. And so that was the first step we took. That in and of itself was very successful. I think one of our clients we saw in the first 4 to 5 months almost close to $500,000 in savings for patients, which is just unreal. Because for folks that are going through this very emotional sort of journey in an effort to have a child, cost is the last thing that you want kind of adding to that weight. And so some great success there.
That is awesome to hear. I've also understood that your support of health systems and hospitals that don't want to get into it all by themselves, you've really removed the barriers to becoming a specialty pharmacy outlet for that community, and you've had some success stories recently. How does that play into women's health as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Our partners, when we join with them, they're at all the various stages of ability to offer some specialty pharmacy services. In some cases, they may not even have a specialty pharmacy. Right. They need support around building that. In other cases, they may have started that journey but are having trouble connecting the clinical work and the clinic teams to kind of growing those specialty pharmacy programs. And I'll continue on this path of reproductive health. That was one of them. We were with a client that had begun the journey in specialty pharmacy, but they were focused obviously on the oncology space and some of those areas that are maybe a bit more common. But we saw this opportunity in the reproductive health clinic. They were using all pharmacies outside of the health system, yet they had the opportunity to bring that under that same roof. And so with the liaison placement, and then we followed that up with clinical pharmacists in that clinic, we were able to move most of that support in-house at this particular hospital. And if you're familiar at all with these therapies, timing is so important. Patients are coming in, throughout the week for ultrasounds and lab work, and all of that really indicates when they take specific parts of these medications. It's very complicated. There's injectables involved, and for a lot of patients that can be, intimidating. But having the clinical pharmacist lead that care journey in terms of medication administration really broke down that barrier. And we saw that patients wanted to use the specialty pharmacy that was local with people that they had met in the clinic and had talked to about their goals of having a family. And really that's been it's a great example of a unique way that this is impacting women's health with some of our partners.
Why is the Clearway Health team invested in coming to Asembia? What is it about this conference that draws you and your consultant team in?
Oh yeah, Asembia is a great conference, great place to meet and network with a lot of the folks that are players in this industry. I attended a couple sessions yesterday. It's always good to hear the different points of view because if there's one word to describe specialty pharmacy, it's complex. and if you're not staying current on what all those drivers are related to these programs and the opportunity to either help providers with issues that they have, or it's payer access, or it's the manufacturer relationships to make sure that, again, in the best scenario, our partners at these hospitals can take care of as many of their patients from like start to finish, getting those medications in hand and seeing those great outcomes. That's sort of the draw on Asembia, just to stay connected, see the various the vendors and the folks leading the way in specialty pharmacy.
Derek, this has been a special opportunity to work with you. Thank you so much for being on the Asembia 2026 post show.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate the time.
Hey, this is Dr. Shafaat Pirani, Chief Clinical Officer for Wellgistics Health, and you are listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Shafaat, it is so good to see you. Asembia 2026.
Absolutely, Todd. Absolutely. I know we've been coming to these shows and for quite a few years, and it's really great bringing all of these different stakeholders together. It's been a phenomenal show so far, and really energized and excited about where the industry's moving towards.
Is this where we met? Did we meet at Asembia years ago?
I think so. I want to say maybe 6-7 Asembias ago, or it might have even been at a different trade show, but most likely it was Asembia, yeah.
Asembia, the whole wording, I remember when they did the rebrand, it's about assembling a whole bunch of people together who are passionate and focused on elevating patient care through specialty pharmacy services. That has been the mission of Wellgistics over so many different parts of pharmacy, not just specialty. Wellgistics has a strength as independent pharmacy partners, long-term care, now specialty. But you started out as a very aggressive secondary wholesaler, but now that's not it anymore. You guys are more of an infrastructure system, an ecosystem. Talk to us about Wellgistics and how Wellgistics has really grown.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. We spun out of, Welldyne back in like 2016, 2017. People know Wellgistics as, the secondary drug wholesale distributor, right, with 3PL capability. We've made some recent advancements into some cold chain, but really kind of where we see the market going and, the business model kind of evolving to support, patient needs, pharma needs, payer needs, and pharmacy needs really, right? Is leveraging, technology solutions to build more of an integrated healthcare ecosystem, right? And so I think a lot of the buzz and traction that you're really kind of seeing out of us now is how can we implement technology solutions to be, modular technology solutions to help kind of improve that access, that affordability, and that transparency that the industry is really, really desperately looking for. So, we're pretty excited about kind of shifting the business model, distribution, 3PL, that'll still be kind of, part of it as we're supporting pharma brands, but it's really going to be leaning into technology solutions and how can we leverage that technology to drive value.
Well, I'm excited to announce on the show there are 3 specific systems and approaches that Wellgistics has invested heavily into, and it's to fix a broken system where we have these distribution models. And talk to us about Einstein RX and Hub RX AI and the integrated distribution network that you guys have built.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of start off with the integrated distribution network because that's what most people know Wellgistics for. So again, that wholesale network, 6,500 independent pharmacies, primarily independent pharmacies. Going to look to start bringing in some grocery chains into that as well, regional grocery chains. But that's really kind of the layer, right? As we think about what's happening in the market, there's about 8,000 pharmacies that have shut down over the last 5-6 years. And really, you're starting to have the creation of pharmacy deserts. And, other organizations do a really good job talking about all of that and how there's access related issues to just even getting care. It's not just even the product side. So really, when I think about kind of what we're doing in some of these services and pieces you've brought up, it's really kind of it's the intersection of this physical and digital infrastructure that we're bringing. So the backbone of Wellgistics was kind of like that physical infrastructure, and then these newer platforms that we've kind of brought to the market, Einstein RX and HubRx AI. We're very, very excited about unleashing the full capabilities of those proprietary platforms. Einstein RX is kind of like this intelligence layer. It takes a myriad of different variables, analyzes it all together to drive smart routing capabilities. And then when you layer in the HubRx AI, which we've actually started using this now in our distribution model, it's just amazing to see all of the value you're able to unlock, where you can now have these AI agents that are making these outbound sales calls, so you start to get so much more operational efficiency. But really, HubRx AI will lean into bringing that into the hub model, right? So how can we streamline, patient follow-ups, that engagement piece, right? Connecting with the patient to make sure therapy initiation is done adequately, appropriately, on time, right? Reducing friction in the system. How do we speed up prior authorizations, right? The use of AI, right? Connecting upstream to payers and to the PBMs. And so really, we're really, really excited about, bringing these technology solutions into the fold and really creating this unified, healthcare ecosystem. And last but not least, I would just be remiss to not include this with Einstein RX as we start to kind of lean into some DTP and DTE, right? We're really looking at analyzing claims data and being able to say, hey, where are the opportunities that we can drive value, right? From a cost mitigation perspective, et cetera. So it's really, it's an exciting time that we're in, this age of AI and how fast technology is changing. And so, the future leaders of tomorrow, right, will be the folks that are investing heavily into the space and trying to drive value to all stakeholders in the healthcare value chain.
You mentioned direct to patient access, and how does that fit in? How does that fit into Wellgistics model?
Yeah, so I think many of the folks in the healthcare industry, specifically the pharmaceutical manufacturers, right? They're seeing issues with their product being able to receive the appropriate formulary coverage, really to get that market access. And when you bring a drug to the market, you're investing $10 to $12 billion, right, on average, and there's such a long lead time, right, for the development of these molecules. And then going through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, clinical studies. And so when you have issues with access, that's particularly problematic for pharmaceutical manufacturers, right? When there's rebates of 50, 60, 70% being given to some of the PBMs to get access to the formulary, and then when you look at the traditional distribution models of how much goes into being able to handle the logistics of all of that, there really isn't a lot of margin out there, right? For people. Complemented with the access issues, that creates a lot of problems. And so really kind of, what we're looking at from a direct-to-patient lens is how can we operate in more of a net-net model, right? How can we help you accelerate access to therapies for these folks that critically need it? Much cleaner, much faster, better, right, in terms of the engagement strategies with patients. And so you'll see us continue to kind of lean in onto this D2P with kind of the fulfillment capabilities that we offer from a net-net model, but then also from the technology solutions that we're bringing in, to help with the commercialization strategy.
All right, so this is just opinion, and I'd love to hear from you on this, but eliminating steps, eliminating parts in the process, definitely eliminating unnecessary middlemen, aka some of the players in the PBM space who I'd love to just completely gut out of it. But the direct to patient, do you know it concerns me? it makes me think, is there enough touch? Is there enough communication happening with the pharmacist? Is there enough touch and communication happening with our physicians who are becoming the specialists in these disease states and looking to the pharmacist to execute on the treatment and keep the patient engaged and asking good questions? So is that a concern that you see in place for the DTP model? Or am I just being too worried about direct-to-patient?
No, I think it's a fair point. I think traditionally, when you think of the prescription journey, right, that is kind of cumbersome. There's a lot of steps involved in it, from the eligibility perspective, then trying to get a prior authorization, the amount of time that it takes to get a therapy kind of approved or the step up in therapy. And so there are a lot of steps that happen in the system. And patients are often kind of confused, right? And why are there delays, in my treatment? Why can I not get access to this therapy? And so that causes a lot of concern in the market because, then they call their pharmacies, they're calling their physicians. The advent of telehealth, and when we think about the GLPs, that's been extremely disruptive, right? Where you see, Novo and Lilly, and now a plethora of other manufacturers looking at more of these DTE models, right? And in terms of trying to provide access. The role of the provider and the role of the pharmacist fundamentally does not change. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think it gets enhanced, right? Because now, instead of dealing with some of the administrative burden, the issues that are kind of that are basically kind of delaying the system a bit, now you're unlocking more time for that pharmacist to be able to participate in that care. And with the newer models, right, over on the horizon, when we think of like RPM and RTM, which is not something that we're currently in, but if you start to think about the market more generally, those create additional touch points, and you're operating more in kind of a direct model. So I'll argue that, there's a little bit of a trade-off, if you will, but I think it'll be much beneficial for the system, because as the consumer becomes more aware and conscientious of their health decisions and wanting to be more proactive versus reactive, there's a lot of opportunity there.
I want to just thank you, Shafaat, for being part of the Asembia 2026 show. This has been an important inclusion in our coverage. Wellgistics is such an innovative company. You're never standing still. I got to have you back on This Week in Pharmacy. We can dig into some of the future plans for Wellgistics and the impact that's going to have on our privately owned pharmacies and the impact it's going to have on specialty pharmacy care. But thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great to be with you, Todd. Thank you for everything that you do for, the industry of pharmacy. Very, very much appreciated. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
This is Meghna Misra from Claritas RX, and you are listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Hey, welcome. Claritas RX has been an organization that I've watched from afar. I've never had an opportunity to talk with anybody. So, Meghna, it is so good to see you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, Asembia. I started nicknaming this about 5 years ago, the Super Bowl of specialty pharmacy, and it really is. I remember when Armada Health, they were Armada Healthcare before Asembia, and they renamed it to Asembia to assemble people together, coming together as one organization, one big industry to do nothing but focus on the patient in specialty pharmacy. Talk to us about Claritas RX. You have AI that's reshaping how decisions get made in healthcare. Where do you see it having the biggest impact on patient visibility?
That's a great question, Todd. So I tend to think of AI as a force multiplier in healthcare. It's helping bring together pieces of the patient journey that have traditionally been pretty fragmented and siloed. It brings it all together into one clear picture. For example, clinical data, pharmacy activity, access and affordability. And once you have that kind of visibility, you can start to catch risks much earlier. So things like a delayed refill or a coverage issue or even early signs that a patient is disengaging, all really critical signals that show up sooner than they would. And so the shift is really from reacting after something goes wrong to getting ahead of it. But to me, the most important part is that AI does not replace the human side. It gives care teams, better insights so they can step in earlier and react earlier and support patients in a more thoughtful and personalized way. Because that is what we do at Claritas RX. We really help bring access to the patients.
That makes a lot of sense. We have to have the patient always at the front of everything that we're doing, out front, the vision of the patient, the vision of what we have to be empathetic of thinking, what does that patient go through to every day in their lives, and the obstacles that they're facing with payment or prior authorization behind the scenes, and they don't really want to put up with that. They just want to be able to take their medication and go on with their lives, especially when we're all as busy as we are. I want to go back to something you said about AI and the teams that are integrating that. So teams that integrate AI into patient care, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give to those teams?
My advice is pretty simple. It is start with the problem and not the technology. So really fall in love with the problem itself. Pick a clear, high-impact pain point. For example, why are patients dropping off therapy? Why are prior auths getting denied? And then let AI be the tool, the technology that helps you answer it. So don't start with, we need an AI strategy or we need to, bring AI into our product. Start with, here's the outcome we are trying to achieve, and then leverage AI to achieve that outcome. So two things that I would say are also non-negotiable when you start bringing AI into your product. So first is explainability. And what I mean by that is if a user really can't understand why the model is recommending something, they won't trust it. And honestly, they shouldn't. And second, make sure you keep your users in the loop. The goal isn't to replace judgment. It is to amplify it. That's what AI does. And the best systems surface insights. They highlight trade-offs and make it much easier to act, but they still leave room for that additional context, that nuance, and of course, you talked about empathy earlier, like empathy.
All right, so Claritas RX has invested so much from time, from obviously investment and money, to develop product leaders that know how to get implementation and how to implement AI and do it the right way, and you broke it into pieces, and you're leading those teams. So talk to us about how do you drive your own efficiency and to embed AI into your products. What do you think is the place where teams are missing? Where are they missing that right now?
Again, that's an awesome question. So, everyone's using AI to be more efficient. And that's great. I do think that's a very, very important use case. But as a product leader, I think what most teams are missing is that we are entering into an era where AI agents aren't just tools. They're actually becoming users of our platform. And that is a big shift. Agents that operate independently, that navigate systems, that execute workflows without constant human oversight. And what that really does, it flips a lot of assumptions. A lot of assumptions that products have traditionally been built on. So the gap I see is that teams aren't yet designing for agent-driven interactions. Are your systems structured in a way that an agent can reliably and trustworthily operate in? Are your APIs, your permissions, your workflows built for that kind of access? And then it's not just a product question. It goes beyond that. It's a go-to-market one as well. So if agents are doing more of the work, who are you really building for and selling to? So the same business buyer, or is it a more technical stakeholder who's now shaping how those agents operate? And I do think that's a gap as far as product strategy and thinking goes, because there's no clear playbook yet. But that shift from AI as a tool to AI as a participant, as a user, it is that piece that I think product leaders really should keep an eye on.
Meghna, this has been so special. I want to thank Claritas RX. I want to thank you for spending time with us at the post show. It's important to get messaging out. There are so many people that weren't able to attend Asembia 2026, and they're listening to your words, they're listening to this interview, and they're saying, that's really special. Didn't think of it that way. And that's why we want to bring these insights and innovators together like you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.